So this morning, we are going to be learning about and hearing about some practical strategies related to polling for incidents. So Richard, would love to hear an introduction from you and for you to introduce us to Tracy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Allison. My name is Richard Johnson. I'm a producer for the Graham Company. Prior to working with the Graham Company, I started my career with Pfizer, and prior to coming to Graham, I left CVS. So I have an extensive healthcare background, and really wanted to focus on some insights on why polling is important for healthcare organizations. Most healthcare organizations are going to have a claims made type of policy and coverage, and we just thought it'd be important to discuss a little bit about polling. The reason why is because nursing home abuse and neglect claims lead to lawsuits that can result in significant payouts for these claims. Quite honestly, the average nursing home lawsuit settlement amount is roughly $406,000. $406,000. So, as the saying goes, bad news does not get better with age or time. So, depending on your insurance policy, whether it's an occurrence policy or a claims made policy, coverage for a claim may not respond if that claim is not made and reported during the time of that policy period. So who needs to know and have knowledge of a potential claim? Why is it important to report these bad news that could turn into a potential claim in advance? And this is what we plan on discussing. So during this stand-up, Tracy and I will discuss what role polling has in your insurance policy. And if you have any questions after this discussion, or would like the Graham Company to review any of your policies, we definitely welcome you to reach out to us. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Tracy. Tracy, please take it away.
Sounds good. Thank you, Richard, for that introduction. Like Richard, before coming to Graham, I also had a previous career. I am still an attorney, no longer practice, but worked in the insurance coverage space, and then joined the Graham Company, where now I focus on claims handling and management for our clients. And I work with a lot of our health and human services clients, both social services and aging services as well. And I work closely with a team of other consultants who work on our health and human services businesses as well. So we're intimately familiar with these claims made policies and some of the wickets that are involved in them. And polling is a topic that we talk about a lot, so we thought it might resonate with you as well. So like Richard said, a lot of the policies, not all, but many of the professional and general liability policies in the health and human services space, specifically the aging services space, are going to be written on a claims made basis. And just for those who might not be intimately familiar with, you're not insurance nerds like we are, it really boiled down to the most simplest terms. Claims made policies where you have one, let's say you're served with a complaint today, and it relates to an incident that took place on July 1st of 2021. But you get this complaint today, where do you report it, or where does your broker report it? They're going to report it, if it's a claims made policy, to the policy that's in effect today, July 28th of 2022, as opposed to the policy that was in effect when the incident that's the subject of that complaint happened. So claims made policies, because it's looking to what's happening today, but these events that happened in the past, oftentimes they're going to include language that is very specific surrounding reporting requirements and coverage triggers for when you're going to report that claim, and then what the carrier's obligation is after you've done it. So when are you obligated to report a claim, and what is a claim, right? So those terms are going to be defined in your policy. I don't expect you to read it unless you're, maybe suffering from insomnia, but your broker should be working with you to understand maybe what that is and what those parameters are. So claims, generally going to be the written demand for relief. So that lawsuit you get served with, that letter that says, my loved one was injured, it was your fault, and I am demanding that you pay me X, or, do something to make me whole. Those are going to be claims. And actual claims, generally, that's going to trigger your reporting requirement under your policies. Even if it, claims made, occurrence, whatever it is, when you get those suits in, you're definitely going to want to be working with folks to get those reported. Sometimes you have obligation to report potential claims as well, or incidents that are occurring during the term of your policy. So potential claims, usually we're going to define those as an event, an incident that's significant enough that you have a reasonable belief, some kind of basis to believe that this could become a claim some point down the line in the future. And, I'm sure if you've been doing this for a while, you know that what happens today, there's a statute of limitations where people have time to decide how angry they are, decide who they're going to talk to, find a lawyer who's maybe going to take that case for them. And you might not get that lawsuit for 2 years. Generally that's the statute of limitations you're working with in most states. So it's important that you're aware of what's going on, and important that you're aware of what your obligation is to report those incidents if you have one. So our considerations with our insureds when we're talking to them, it's what does your policy language say? Does it command you to do something? So some policies will say the insured shall give notice. The insured must give notice, and it might even put a strict time requirement on it. Some policies may be a little more fluid. They may say, if you do this, then you can, or they might obligate you to report, but give you a little bit of a grace period, a reasonable amount of time to get it into their hands. There's other situations where maybe your policy, not only does it have a command, or maybe it doesn't have that command, but it might include something called a known circumstances exclusion. So we're always looking at our clients' policies to make sure that that language isn't in there, or if it is, to make sure the client's aware of it, because in those instances, that exclusion is going to give the carrier a little potential out, if you will, where they might be able to preclude coverage for an incident if it occurred before the start date of their policy, even if you didn't get that complaint until today. But let's say someone in the organization knew, let's say your director of nursing knew that this event happened and it's pretty significant. So a reasonable person should have known that, hey, maybe this was going to become a claim. So in those cases where we have that language, we see carriers maybe taking a long, hard look at who knew what. And if it happened before their policy was in effect and it's, pretty nasty, they may look to use that known circumstances exclusion or language similar to it to find a way to deny your claim or to reserve rights on that claim and potentially deny it in the future. So we're always working with our clients to make sure you're aware of what those wickets are and make sure we're doing everything we can to capture whatever we need to capture under that policy to minimize the likelihood that you're going to have a situation where you're going to get that letter that says, we need more information, or we're going to deny this, or we're going to investigate this a little further. We're definitely seeing some instances where carriers are being a little more critical. COVID era has been difficult on everyone, including carriers. People feel that pain. They start to become a little more discerning about the language in the policy, what they're going to accept, what qualifies as proper notice, those kind of things. So it's very critical, especially in this current environment, to make sure that you're aware of what you need to do and that you're working with your broker to make sure you're doing it in a timely fashion. So how do we work with our clients to do this? We engage them in what we call polling, and we're doing that generally prior to the end of a policy period. And we're definitely focusing on it when we're looking to potentially market coverage to a new carrier or move that policy to a new carrier. And what is polling, right? It's just a fancy term. We're not talking politics here, but polling is simply the act of just asking a specific group of people whether they're aware of any claims. So those demands for relief, those lawsuits, things like that might have been made against the organization or any of the employees that are working in their capacity as an employee with the organization, and any of those claims that may not have already been reported. And in some cases where you have a policy that requires you not only to report those actual claims, but also incidents that have the potential to become a claim, we're going to go through the exercise of polling to capture the claims that may not have already been reported, but also those significant incidents that may have happened that set off your spidey senses and made you think like, ooh, that might come back to become a claim later in the future. So how do we go about doing that? So first, we're going to do it generally in an email that we're going to send out to our clients. And when we do it, we're going to first start by identifying the group of people that we need to reach out to poll. And your policy is going to tell you exactly who those people are, those categories of people whose knowledge is going to trigger your obligation to tell the carrier about that claim or tell that carrier about that event. So ideally, when we work with our clients, and hopefully when you're working with your brokers, you're going to want to do everything you can to limit the scope of who those people are who have to have that knowledge. You want to keep it narrow and you want to keep it tailored to a group of people that are generally going to have a higher level of oversight. So your executives within the organization, if you have risk managers, those risk managers, HR, vice presidents or directors of HR, maybe general counsel, people at that level. You want to avoid having any language that is super broad that says any employee has to have knowledge or, everyone within the organization, because it's going to be really difficult to reach out and get your arms around that group and feel confident that you've gotten everything in that you need. The second thing that we want to do in that polling exercise is educate that group. So we've identified them. They're in the address line of the email, the to line. We want to then arm them with the information they need to understand the goal of this exercise and what we're trying to do. So we're going to explain to them, here's why we're polling, your coverage is moving, we're marketing your coverage, or your policy includes language that has a stricter requirement. What is the trigger for the reporting? So, your knowledge of this incident shall trigger, or whatever that language is, we're going to want to cite it so people can see it and understand it. What needs to be reported? So is it just claims, just those actual demands, those lawsuits, those things, or does it include incidents? So you have to really think through, hey, this report hit my desk where family was angry, person was hurt, transferred to the hospital, fall with fracture, something like that, where it was a little more significant, it's standing out. You might have to take a little more time to really think through those things. So you want to clearly identify that incidents need to be captured. And then you want to include what detail needs to be listed in that report to the carrier. So we can't just have you say, hey, I remember Joe fell and his wife was angry. We're going to need more than that to report to the carrier to ensure that you're protected. So we're going to specify. We need to know who, the date, the nature of the incident, what happened that leads you to believe this incident is significant enough to be reported. So we'll outline all of that. And then finally, we want to identify all the deadlines. So there's going to be a deadline by which you have to get this information to us, and we have to get it to your carrier. So we're going to say we need this by, the end of if your policy period ends on July 30th at 11:59 p.m. We're going to specify that, but we're going to ask you to get it to us a little earlier than that, obviously, so that we have time to get it in. But we're going to make it clear what those deadlines are. And we're also going to want to make it clear what the consequences of not getting that information in on time is, so that the audience that's reading that letter understands that, hey, it's pretty important that I take some time to think about this, put my thoughts together, and forward those incidents to the right people at my broker to help me work through this process. So that's really how we approach that exercise. I know that's a lot of information to throw in a very general way, but hopefully you've been through a similar exercise. And if you haven't and you think, hey, we might be moving coverage this year because the market is changing and we need some better rates or we need some better processes around this, it's a great time to reach out to the people that are helping you with your insurance, helping you with your claims, to talk that through. And if you don't have anybody like that, or you just want to bat around some ideas, I'm happy to talk about it in a little more detail, since there is a little more nuance to it, but this is really just a general high level introduction to how we go about doing this exercise. And with that, Richard, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to highlight or anything you wanted me to hit a little more. I know we're right at 10:15, want to be cognizant of everybody's time. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to talk through that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for diving into that high level overview of how we approach polling for our clients. If anyone has any questions, Tracy and I would love to welcome you all to reach out. We can discuss them further. And if you have any policies or any questions that you would like to throw around to us, just feel free to reach out. And if you need our information, I think Allison will be able to provide that for you.
Yes, thank you both so much. That was really helpful, and great practical information and steps that you shared there at the end, Tracy. So I'm sure that will be useful for folks as they're thinking about this in their own context. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Great. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you do have questions, feel free to either put them in the chat now or you can send us an email later. Our next call will be in 2 weeks and we'll be joined by Amy Young, who I see is on the call with us today, talking about construction project delivery methods. So a bit of a different topic, but we're always glad to have Wagman sharing their expertise with us. So we hope you'll join us again in a couple of weeks. This will be recorded, so you'll be able to access this on our YouTube page if you'd like to share it with any of your team members. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks, everyone.